I'm saying he's somewhere else.
Somewhere else. All right. So this is just an occasion to follow up on things that we talked about last time. So very informal. If you have any questions about the practice that you would like to have addressed, you're most welcome. I think some of you have already shared your experiences with others in your Kula groups, and I'm sure that those who have not done so will probably do so at their next Kula meetings. So we'll use this occasion for any kind of questions you may have regarding that 30-day experiment of holding your attention in the darkness. You need more light below?
Yeah, if there are going to be questions back there, you can turn the light on.
You turn that
So now-
light on.
Okay, that's good.
You can leave the door open, somebody may come in. All right. So, any questions about the practice?
Were we looking for something in particular or whatever just might happen?
Mostly it's maintaining your awareness on the darkness, just the darkness itself. Not allowing yourself to be distracted by anything else that may arise, you see. Not even any swirls of lights and colors, not to allow yourself to be distracted by that, but to maintain just this pure awareness of blackness. This state of maintaining your awareness of just blackness with no other distractions. In the tradition, it's been referred to as Nirvikapa Samadhi. Yes, as opposed to Savikapa Samadhi. Savikapa Samadhi is a kind of restful calmness, but based on holding your attention on an object, a thought, a thing, a phenomenon. That produces a certain kind of peace. Nirvikapa Samadhi is when you drop the object altogether. And you're just in a state of pure consciousness itself with no stress whatsoever. Whenever you pay attention, there is tension. You see, it is when the attention itself comes to its root, where there is nothing to pay attention to. When there is no paying of attention to this or that, that is samadhi in its most ultimate sense. So the focus of your efforts is to simply maintain your awareness of just this blackness itself.
No, sir.
No Simran for the most part. Simran is something you do in your formal practice. Although there has been occasions where people have been instructed to do a little bit of Simran in the darkness, but the practice is more like bhajan. The practice of maintaining the awareness of blackness just itself is a kind of, it's more associated with the practice of bhajan. Because in bhajan, that's what you're doing, with the exception there's sound. Ultimately, you go to a point where even the sound drops. And then you are in that state that I just call Nirvikapa Samadhi, you see. So first there's Simran, you drop Simran to Dhyan, you drop Dhyan to bhajan, then you drop bhajan. And there you have Nirvikapa Samadhi. Remember, Simran, bhajan, and Dhyans are means. They are not the end. And the practice of maintaining your awareness of just that blackness helps you, mostly in your budgeting practice ultimately, because that's what budgeting is. It's just maintaining your awareness without the support of Simran. Simran is dropped. And you must ultimately become capable of maintaining your awareness even without the support of Simran. Simran is just an aid. So budgeting is a higher practice of this maintaining of awareness, if nothing. But at some point, even this shove is dropped. You see? Soundless sound. Anahat shove. You see? Just perfect, no sound. Because sound itself came out of something. What is the ground of sound? Itself is not sound. Sound is the ground of all creation, but itself is not the prior condition. So it's this practice of maintaining your awareness of just the blackness, just the darkness itself, gives you a better experience of what budget should be about. Something else about it? I've already heard on many of you all tapes how good it made you feel and so forth and so on. So you all have done that one already. I'm just really providing this occasion to refine the practice for those of you who wish to go forward with it, you see. So that you can begin to link it up to budget.
You know, one of the things that I haven't had the opportunity to
Share with a cooler?
share with a cooler.
Are you in a cooler group? That's probably why.
But I have been doing the practice.
You do it.
And my question is while I'm doing the practice, I notice less thinking is going on. Does that happens?
Yeah, because you see, as you're doing that practice, so much of what you think about is based on what you are seeing. Now you see this person, and immediately your mind starts thinking, oh, who is this motherfucker? Who is this man? What is this? Why they doing this? Why they doing that? You see, you start thinking about what you see. So just by shutting down that flow of attention through seeing reduces thinking. It's slowed down even more if you can not pay attention to any of the impressions that you carry based on what you have seen. Because you may see this person, do all that thinking about them, close your eyes, but you're still thinking about them because you're carrying that impression of that experience and so forth and so on. But if you can get past that with the use of your Simran, you see, because Simran, you can't think about anything in the world because the words have no objective reference. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for the mind to wander. But you're absolutely right, you see. And then you're sitting still. So you don't have to think about what, where you're going and when you fall or any of that. I mean, a lot of distraction is reduced simply by being still and not particularly seeing anything. And then if you do budgeting, and once you get familiar with what it feels like to maintain your awareness in the darkness, when you get used to sitting at that center in the darkness, what you add now to that is silence. You see, that's why you plug up, because now there's no distraction by sounds either, from the outside world, and so forth and so on. But yes, you see, I think it'll be good. I'm sure there's some other cooler meetings they send out their emails. Just watch your email, because it will be good for you to go and to share with others what your outcome was, and then you can kind of compare. But the ideal is that, you want to get more and more subtle. More and more subtle. Less and less distracted. It's a lot of things that will influence your outcome in that practice. Particularly as it pertains to the problem with thinking. I mean, a lot of our thinking is due to our own attachments. It's just stuff going on and around us that we place so much importance on that we just can't stop thinking about it, so forth and so on. So I don't want to give the impression that, you can fall into that state of profound quietude by any kind of mechanical process, There has to be other things that you've been able to also do. I mean, if you sit there and you still got something cooking on the stove, you're probably not going to fall into a deep state of peace, right? Because your attention is still on something that you got running.
There's this also about this fear that comes up for me too.
Yes, that's sometimes been the confession of others, that they have that kind of fear. What happened is going to be pretty much individual. We said before that, there is some fear of darkness already in our psychology. Inherently, we're afraid of the dark, so forth and so on. We talked about all of that. So yes, sometimes there's fear that comes up. It may not even be fear of what's might come up in the darkness. It's a fear of what you gotta give up to do the practice. You see, that oh boy, I take this hour out and I do this. This will go wrong, or I'll miss this, or I'll miss that. And sometimes it's just a fear of giving up what is necessary even to sit. And the fear that you're feeling is really kind of an anxiety about being there, sitting in darkness when you got a bunch of shit to do, right? And there's that fear. So sometimes the fear is not always coming out of the darkness, it's just coming out of your attachments. But it's fear nevertheless,
Bhagwan, is it the goal of the sit to take us to the edge of creation, or to get to know ourselves in a way that we really, truly exist?
Yes, it's those things. And I guess the order is first there is the experience of who you are, which is the goal of all meditation, isn't it? I mean, when you think about it, what is meditation? And what meditation is this kind of process that we deliberately engage in for the sake of the recovery of the experience of our true self. You see, it's not adding something to our egoic self. It is the release of that attachment to our concept of self. That is the whole purpose and focus of meditation. Very often you see, beloved, what is really happening for most of us is that we're trying to have all of these higher experiences without letting go of the ego. Well, that's not going to happen, you see. We are trying to be happy or enlightened and all these things without letting go of and transcending the ego. How will you be happy without transcending the ego? That's not going to happen. So you have to have some kind of an understanding. See, there's no tricks on the path. There's just this radical understanding. And then the practice of that understanding. So you have to know what it is that you're doing. You have to know why you're doing it. Why meditate in the first place? And when you consider that, the why of meditation ultimately can be summarized as simply because ego hurts. You take all of those 13 reasons for meditating that we have put in pamphlet form and so forth and so on. If you summarize them, reduce them to its most fundamental essence, it really says that you should meditate because ego hurt. Ego hurt. The state of ego hurts. So that's why you're seeking this and that thing. You see. We move attention into the pursuit of pleasure because fundamentally you are hurting. That's why you're seeking pleasure in the first place. So meditation is done to cure that condition, that pain, that hurt. That is ego. Ego hurts. It doesn't feel good. And then you consider how to meditate, you see. That involves all kinds of things, postures and diets and so forth and so on, you see. But there's the what, why, how of meditation that has to be understood. Even the when. What, why, how, and even when. You see. And where. So there has to be some understanding of all of these aspects of sadhana. What it is, you see, why one should engage in it, how to engage it, see, when to engage it, and where. If you can't answer the why part of it, then you remain uninspired. Now, Mahaseva will be giving you all some things to consider about why you have so little motivation. Well, your motivation for practice is small because you really don't understand why you should be practicing in the first place. You have not really considered it. Not really. Your consideration has been mechanical, shallow, superficial. Hmm? When you know why, and that why is rooted in a profound understanding and intelligence, then you do it. You have the energy to do it. You have the motive, all of that to do it, because you understand why you're doing it. You don't understand why you're doing it. You follow what I'm saying? If you don't know the what and the why, instructing you is just academic. You be given techniques, but you don't have the understanding that even make you capable of applying the techniques. Without the what and why part, you're simply not even capable of doing any sadhana. You won't do any sadhana. Your sadhana will be just another part of your repertoire for relieving yourself from the agony of your egoic condition. That's all that is. You're doing sadhana to make yourself feel better. And when it doesn't make you feel better, you go to the next thing on your list of things that you do. You see? So, is that about right? Your sadhana is ego serving. It's something you do to feel better. And if you don't get any pleasure out of it, according to your definition of pleasure, then you don't do it. Because pleasure is what you're after. Because pleasure is the only remedy that you have for your condition. So there's some fundamental understanding that you must have, you see. I mean, you can sit in closets and cut the lights off and plug your ears and do all that, but without understanding, you're just playing in your ass. You may get some initial relief from your otherwise painful state of ego, but like any indulgence of attention, the next time you repeat it, you get less pleasure, then you repeat it again, less pleasure, and then it drops away. You see, that is the outcome of any kind of addictive and pleasure-based pursuit. The return of pleasure is diminished. And you enjoy your practice less and less and less and less and less and less and less. But you keep chasing the original hit you got. That's what drug addicts do. They're chasing. You're chasing. You know what I mean? But the real deal is not about chasing. Is it? So this practice of entering into the darkness, so forth and so on, is true of all spiritual practices. Is really about the dissolution of this false sense of self. That's what it's about. Not providing an alternative or some kind of additional thing you can do to make yourself feel better. That's not what it's about. One of the companion sutras or tantras that goes with this tantra of entering into blackness is the sutra that talks about developing and deepening your capacity to feel. So you can't feel yourself. Your ability to feel is not profound. You see, you can only feel that which is gross, and therefore you presume that is who you are. You see, but if you could feel deeper in that state, you see, of maintaining your awareness in the blackness, you recover more depth of feeling. You can feel deeper. You see, it's about feeling beyond the limitations of the body, mind, and emotions, feeling beyond all of that, feeling past all of that, deeper than that, going deeper than that, feeling. But to go deeper than your body, your mind, and your emotions, you must cultivate this ability to feel. Getting still, you see, eliminating distractions and so forth, increases the depth of feeling. People who are blind feel much deeper because sight is not there. All the other senses are go sky high. They hear with much more, you see, precision and so forth. They feel because they got to feel to, you know, to get around. They feel. Even when they walk, they can feel the ground with their feet. You walk, you never feel the ground you walking on. You're distracted, you see. The blind, they feel every step they take. So in some kind of sense, then, you must become capable of feeling at a much greater depth. And so the sutra says, feel. First, just get quiet, settled. Feel. And what are you feeling for? You see, ultimately you're feeling for yourself. You're trying to feel yourself. Like you could feel these clothes on your body. You see my point? You're trying to feel yourself. And the sutra says, feel. And as that depth of feeling begins to occur, the first thing you'll feel is my thoughts. You'll feel your thoughts. And in that moment where you are able to feel your thoughts, it breaks your identification with them. And so the sutra says, feel my thoughts, then I-ness. You see, I-ness. Aham, purna aham, per self, is felt when you can go past the thoughts and you will feel yourself. A very simple sutra, but profound. The presumption of the sutra is that you've already been able to reach a point where you can feel beyond the body in your practice, you know. But that too is part of the process, right? If you can feel a sense of being beyond the limit of your body, if you can feel that part of your being that is beyond this physical body, you see, then you will come closer to the experience of who you are, what you are. But as long as you're trying to attempt sadhana on the presumption that you are who you think you are, then you simply are not going to become capable of doing sadhana. You lack the understanding that makes sadhana possible for you. You're still operating on the presumption that you are who you think you are. That you are what you think you are. You see. Minimally, what is required is that you must begin to function on the presumption of being consciousness itself. Even if you've not been able to feel deep enough to have an actual experience of that truth, you must at least presume it. You must cultivate the right concept of what you are. Mentally. then act on the basis of that presumption. Because you're already living on the presumption that you're the body. That's also a presumption. Well, just change presumptions. So all of these practices, all of these tantras, sutras, are all means of helping us go beyond this ego. It's all purpose to help you go beyond your ego. And are not means by which you can make your ego self feel better. It's not the purpose of sadhana. So you have to understand all of this. There must be a radical understanding. That's the whole purpose of considering things. The whole purpose of the discipline of consideration is to produce radical understanding. Radical understanding is that understanding that results in a change. If it doesn't result in a change, then understanding was not radical, very simply put. This considering the spiritual arguments are a very important phase of the attainment of understanding. It is the second step in the process by which you are able to function on the presumption of being consciousness, minimally. And of course, the first thing you must do is hear the Dhamma. Hear Dhamma. Or read Dhamma, or something like that. And then you must really consider it, manana. See, first is sarvana, hear it, to manana. Consider it. Manana, consider it, consider it. Consider to the point of reaching a conclusion about it, you see. Not speculation. You all confuse speculation with consideration. And the difference between the two is vast. Vast. You all confuse philosophizing with consideration. Consideration is not philosophizing. It is not psychologizing. It is not case making. It is altogether much more profound than that. Much more relentless than casual discussions that are to be continued. And it is a step that cannot be skipped. You simply must understand. And if that has occurred, then you move naturally to the next phase, nidhyasasana, and you practice. You understand why now? You follow me?
Mhm.
You still can't understand why you should practice. Not in no real sense. You know I should practice, but that's not understanding. You see? That gets the job done. When you sit in that darkness, you see, all kinds of things can begin to happen for you. If you sit quietly, undistracted, feeling deeply, and you will begin to automatically notice there is something that is not thinking, but that is a way of thinking. And automatically the feeling of that being who I am arises in you. It's just a natural occurrence. It's not theoretical. The sutra goes on to say, feel internal organs, me. Again, very cryptic. And by internal organ, they're not talking about your heart, your livers, and so forth. Internal organs, that's the atinkarenga, that's manas, chitta, buddhi, and the sense of self, ego. And you begin to see, I'm not manas, I'm not chitta. Chitta is attention, I'm not attention. It's profound. I am prior to the play of attention. You're not buddhi, you're not the intellect. And you're definitely not this false sense of self. Feel internal organs, me. Nirvikapa Samadhi is the experience of me.
Is it like being at one with these observations? What you're seeing is not what being that you seek.
I don't quite follow the question.
It's like what the universe is. I am at one with it. If I was accomplished and recognize my oneness with the practice. I don't know if I'm stating it right.
The experience is neti neti. The experience of the self and the not self is overcome. You see, in some sense, there's some truth in what you're saying, but that's further down the road. This experience of oneness that you talk about must be first preceded by the experience of being who you and what you really are. You see, that must come first. Self-realization must come first. You see. There is a kind of oneness that you are already feeling, but that's a false oneness. Because you feel you're one with this body now, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Sure you do. Well, that's not enlightenment. Okay. So there's a kind of pseudo and false sense of oneness that is based on being in that ego condition of identified with that which one is not. And then there is the real deal. But it is not articulated in the sense that I am one with that. That's still duality. You talk. That's still a kind of dualism going on. It is much more radical than that. The experience is that I'm the only one.
One with the only one.
No, you're not one with anything. You are everything.
Okay.
There is no other than
All
I.
right. That's fantastic.
There is no many-ness. The dilemma of mind Berber is overcome. I and thou is overcome. There is none of that. You see. I am oneness with that. See, too, there is no two. That's God. It defies description, you see. But before any of that can become a reality for you, you have to get back to where you really at. There's no consolation in that, just knowing that intellectually. It doesn't change your reality, does it?
No.
Ego still hurts. And no amount of spiritual information will ever relieve you of the agony and the pain of your egoic condition. Being an ego hurts. It hurts. And the cure for that condition also hurts. There's a tapasya that is associated with the cure of ego. That too hurts. Ego hurts, sadhana hurts. They both hurts. So all of this practice that we've talked about over the years, up until this most recent discussion about some of these tantras and sutras contained in the Vijnana Bharata Sutras, you see, all of this still has the same ultimate and fundamental purpose. It is to break your grip on the illusion of being that which you are not. You suffer because you presume to be that which you think you are. And as long as that presumption is in place, then there can be no ending to your suffering. And you cannot do anything like sadhana without letting go of this presumption of being the body-mind. You can't have anything like happiness as long as you're unwilling to drop your ego, sense of self, and replace that sense of self with the presumption of being consciousness. This is the great revelation. Saints and sages, they make the great revelation, you make the choice. And that's that. I mean, at some point you must pause and examine your life and see this futility. See the futility of trying to be happy without transcending the ego. See it. Because that's what you've been trying to do. You've been trying to be happy without transcending the ego. You've been trying to be happy, enlightened, and spiritual without transcending the ego. See the futility of that. See it as clear as you see the color of blue. And unless you see it as clear as you see the color of blue, you simply will remain incapable of sadhana. Now this is the real deal, folks. And you must consider that. I spent time yesterday with Brahmaji. We had some discussion about it. Right, beloved?
Yes, sir.
So I offer that same consideration to each and all who are here today. See exactly what you're trying to do. You are trying become spiritual without transcending your ego. You're trying to be happy without transcending your ego. And that is a futile ambition. You can't walk around here presuming to be this body, mind, and your emotions and really get down to the business of Solomon. You must drop this presumption. Do y'all understand me?
Yes, sir.
You can't have the experience. Okay, I understand that, but you must give up this wrong concept of what you are. You see? My whole function is to undermine that concept, not to reinforce it. It's to undermine it. You must even see how it is possible that you are not this body mind. You see? The consideration must be profound. Many of you, you can't even conceive how it's even possible that you are something greater than, much more wonderful than this body mind. You can't even conceive it. So how can you become that which you can't even conceive? Consideration, samyama, rumination, reflection, contemplation, introspection, engage profoundly, seriously. Helps you at least become capable of conceiving it. Bhavana, the mental possibility of being something greater than this body mind. But you can't be happy or make spiritual progress operating under the presumption that you are this body, mind, and your emotions. That just can't happen. So don't just sit in that darkness as just another one of the many things that you now can do to give yourself some temporary relief from the agony of your egoic condition, you see. Sit and try to feel the truth about what you are. Seek the truth of your own being in that moment, rather than indulging in something merely because it makes you feel better psychologically and emotionally for a minute. Because eventually the returns that you will get from such a practice will diminish, like any addictive behavior, and then you're right back where you started. You must understand that just is no substitute, no trick. That is an alternative to understanding. It is understanding and intelligence that generates sadhana, and nothing else. The purpose of these kinds of gathering is to refine our understanding, and thus lead to a refinement of and a greater definement of our sadhana. So I am willing to discuss with you anything that pertains to that.
So this consciousness that we have in the darkness, that shows up looking like quiet, no things, no thoughts. That's the consciousness that you're referring to. What does it look like?
Well, what you're experiencing in your practice of the darkness is certainly not nirvikapa samadhi. You see, it's just something that gives you a kind of ideal of what it might be like, you see. But it itself is not it. What you're doing in that blackness is really what you should be doing in your formal practice. But since you all can't do that in your formal practice, I have to give you something where you at least get some sense of what I'm talking about. You see? There's nothing that you are experiencing in your practice of entering the darkness that you shouldn't have been already experiencing in your formal practice. It is not a higher practice, it is a lower practice. But since you all were not able to maintain your awareness in the blackness with eyes closed, what to do? You follow me? I simply offer that to you as an opportunity for you to at least get some kind of sense of what it means to maintain your focus in the darkness. To have some kind of taste of that experience, you see. Be able to identify when you're doing the practice right, so that you can be rescued from many more years of doing your practice wrong. Simran, Bhajan, Dhyan is to be done at the eye center and the blackness. You see. But if you have no experiential understanding of what that is, what it even feels like, then you will go on doing what you've been doing. My assumption, and based on what I've heard, my conviction is that a few of you rascals has actually got a kind of sense of what it means to maintain your awareness in darkness. And once you have gotten that, now you can close your eyes and be in darkness finally. And get on with your business of Simran, Bhajan, and Dhyan, you see. But not to become fascinated by sitting in darkness as if it's equal to formal practice. It is not. So the condition, the ultimate state of consciousness, you see, still requires you to do your practice as given to you at the time of your initiation. You simply must become capable of closing your eyes, sitting in your formal practice, and have that same ability to enter darkness that you do with your eyes open. Now that you have recognized what it feels like to enter the darkness, now close them and enter into it. Ultimately, to even enter into it with eyes wide open. Such must be your familiarity with the process, you see. But these techniques are meaningless and cannot be applied if you don't have any understanding. See, I can go on there giving you all kinds of techniques, but without understanding, you're not going to be able to do any of them in any real sense. People always come to the path. We all came to the path. And one of the things that attracted us was this spiritual technology that the mystics talk about and offer. So we came running to get us a mantra so that we could fix our life, you see? Had no understanding. We wanted to get the thing, the technique. And the masters, out of their great compassion, you see, and wisdom, they gave us the technique and said, well, I know this fool don't understand it. Let me give him the technique. Then I have to work on his understanding. Yes. Because if I don't give him something to do, this bastard's going to leave. They want their technique. And they're not willing to go through the process of first understanding what it is going on here before you ask for a technique. And out of great compassion, you see, the Guru pays us before you even work the week. Because you ain't going to work unless you get your check. That's how we are. Get paid now. So you get your technique. You get your mantra or whatever, and immediately you start trying to use it. Only to discover you can't use it. You don't know what to do with it, you see. And not knowing what to do, misusing, doing wrong practice, you often become discouraged. You say, it don't work, you see. And then you go and find something else now. You go to the next thing on your list. Okay, mantras don't work, let me get married. You scratch mantra off. Let me get a job, let me get a PhD, let me move, let me get a new car. I mean, you go right down your list. But you have never understood. So the task becomes how to keep you occupied, engaged, long enough to bring you into an understanding. Because you simply must understand the what, the why, the how, the when, and the where of meditation. You must understand that. Your Kula process should be about all of that. And not an endless exchange of rationalizations for the failure to practice.
Bless you.
And when you're not in your Kula process with your Kula mates, you still need to be considering what you are. I mean, you really have to become capable of it. So at least mentally accepting the proposition that you are not this body, mind, and emotions. That you are, in fact, just this awareness in which the body, mind, and emotion is arising. You simply must, at least in terms of understanding, be able to live the principle of Maya. Your body is Maya. Your emotions is Maya. Your thoughts is Maya. And everything and everyone that you experience that is arising is also Maya. No one and nothing is you or yours. No one and no thing that is arising in your awareness is you or yours. It is Maya. It is just arising. You must break the spell of samsara. You must become capable of that as a precondition for the practice of sadhana. You see, you're supposed to bring that with you. Now feel in yourself there, sitting here now with me, you see. Feel your struggle even with that, you see. Feel how ambiguous you are about that. Feel it. You see, you're very ambiguous about it.
What's ambiguous?
You know, torn, double-minded, you see, doubtful. Even fearful. Scared. See, that's like being on the high dive.
Would that be compatible with peace? Be still and know who I am?
Well, again, those are talking about techniques. But what I am saying, beloved, is that there is a profound understanding required even before you will be still.
Mm-hmm.
You must have that understanding. You must change. Not necessarily outwardly, but inwardly. There must be a change in you. You must change. And what is it you must change? You must change your concept of self. Now that must change. Can you all feel, do you all understand what I'm
Yes,
talking
sir.
about?
Yes, sir.
That you must actually change your concept of yourself, because what you're operating out of now is just a concept. It's just a concept of self you have. It's not anything more substantial than that. It's just a goddamn concept. It ain't the truth. It's just a concept. And it is a concept that is not working for you. You are operating out of a concept of yourself that hurts, it's painful, it is suffering. It's just a concept of yourself. It is not what you are. You got to change the concept of yourself. Forget about all of this other stuff.
Yes.
You follow what I'm saying? All that's peripheral. You can't use it. You will not be helped by my giving it to you more and more and more abundantly. You must change. The very concept of yourself. You must go to the root of this thing. I'm not even saying that you must achieve it existentially. I'm saying just the concept. You all cannot even, let me see, consider changing the concept of yourself. That's not even an option for you. You want to achieve all of this stuff that you're talking about without changing your concept of yourself. How are you going to do that? Now, how are you going to do it? You want to cling to your concept of being a body and yet overcome your fear of death. This is bullshit. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
That's bullshit. Pure bullshit. That ain't gonna happen. Your fear of death is based on your concept of being a body. And unless you change that, I don't care what you're saying, you just talking shit. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
As long as you are operating out a concept of being equal to your emotions and stuff like that, you see, and any talk you have about detachment and all that, that's just bullshit. Pure bullshit. And that ain't gonna change. Now you must hear me. And more, you must consider what you're hearing. And even more, you must apply the understanding that comes out of that consideration. Consider what you are. But you're going to change your concept of yourself. Not your diet, not your posture, your concept of yourself. Changing diets and postures is meaningless. You must change. Not your hairdo, not where you live, not how you dress, not your name. You must change the very concept you have of yourself. And either you will do that or you will not do it. And if you will not do it, you ain't got nothing coming. And nothing I say is going to help you. So you might as well not waste your time hanging around me and go on with your business.
Do you have a stick?
That won't help you. I tried that. You all are hopeless I don't want to do that to you. I don't want to delude you. I don't want to mislead you. You see my point? I have no interest in doing that. You see?
Guru Sahib, I just want to know, I'm starting to get spent. It's like my head is spinning right now.
Good.
What really inspired me about, the Dharma is that for the first time in my life, I realized that it's a higher possibility for myself. I'm more
Absolutely.
than just, and ain't nobody never told me that but you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what inspired me to keep going and keep staying in the race. Because sometimes you feel like giving up.
Yes, sir.
I'm just saying, this ego, it really hurts to get out the bed and to sit when you don't want to do it.
Absolutely.
But really discover yourself.
Absolutely. Sakyana, the key thing that you said is that the Guru gives us a vision of a higher possibility to what we are. Because the concept that you come up with yourself, it's almost an insult.
It's fucked up, man. I ain't gonna
You follow what I'm saying?
messed up.
It's almost an insult. It's self-contempt in the most radical sense of the word. I am a body, mind, emotions, history is the epitome of self-contempt. You are so much greater than that. Maharaj used to say that we're like kings and queens walking around as if we are paupers and beggars. You see. And that state of poverty and destitution is all the result of your clinging to the wrong concept of who you are. You see. You've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, and convinced that you are something less than the divine itself. And you have bought it. And and you are acting out of that delusion. You see. And the saints and guru come and they bring us the great revelation about what we really are. You see? But it sounds so, impossible to us that we could be anything greater than this concept of self that you're operating on. It's unbelievable. You can't believe it. You can't conceive it. No, this can't be. You see. And so you reject the great revelation and continue to live your life as a beggar. The saints and guru do not come. Maharaji said it's almost like we're all in prison, Maharaji says. And there's people coming to the prison and they get you a better bed so that you're more comfortable at night and get you a good 8 hours of sleep, but you're still locked down. You see, they paint your walls and give you some pictures, give you a TV, you know what I mean? Give you better food, but you're still in a prison. And Maharaji said the saints come to get you out of the prison, not to improve your conditions in the prison. You see? So the saints come to get us out of your ego. You are in ego. You are in prison. You're in a terrible state. It hurts. You know it hurts. You know ego hurts. You know that. Every time your feelings are hurt, that's ego. Now look how many times your feelings are hurt. And how easily they are hurt. Every 20 seconds, your feelings are hurt. Ego hurts. You get a toothache, it hurts. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Just the slightest cut on this body, the slightest thing, this stuff hurts. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
The condition you in hurts. Your mind hurts because you can't figure shit out, and the anxiety of not being able to figure shit out, and that hurts. Don't it? Doubt hurts. Confusion hurts. It's uncomfortable. It don't feel good. It is unease. It's dis-ease. It's fear. You're always afraid because you don't know what's going to happen that's going to hurt you more. Right? Is that right?
Yes.
The
Hallelujah.
guru comes. She's going to have a Sevananda moment. The guru and saints come to bust us out of our ego. But some people have become imprisoned, and they become
Institutionalized.
institutionalized. You have the institutionalized inmate who can't function outside the prison no more. He's been locked up. She's been locked up so long now. They don't want freedom. They can't function. They're afraid of it. Even if they are released, they go out, they commit a crime so they can go back in because they cannot live at that level of social responsibility that freedom requires of them. They have become so helpless. You see? There are souls like that. They can't function outside of their ego. They have been institutionalized in their egoic condition.
Shawshank Redemption.
Shawshank Redemption. And the question is, have you become institutionalized?
Yeah.
Do you prefer the egoic condition that you're in, subject to be hurt any minute? Yes, beloved.
You mentioned to us once that because it's a cycle, and it's like I can't say, well, I'm breaking the cycle, I'm doing this. You said that suffering plays a big part. So the suffering itself, the seeing of that suffering, is like the impetus or the motivation to start breaking that cycle.
Yeah, the thing is to see the futility of all that you're doing to relieve that suffering. See, the suffering is self-evident. You don't have to see it. It is the case. Nobody has to tell you you're suffering. You are suffering. That ain't nothing you have to think about. It is so. It is given. Right? You are suffering. You follow me? And what you must do, you must inspect the suffering itself. Instead of this endless preoccupation in finding ways to relieve the suffering. You see, you're suffering, then you immediately do something to relieve yourself. That something is transient. That something is temporary. It can't last forever. And then you fall back into the suffering. You scream, ah! And then you do something else. You see, you're constantly seeking relief from this. But you never deal with this. You must inspect the suffering and stop running from it and find out its causes. See, running from it is not finding out the causes. That's just something you're doing temporarily. You run and eat something, you run and watch something, you run and lay down and take a nap, you run to the mall, you run and do a little meditation. You're just running from suffering. You have never looked at your suffering and inspected it and find out what is its cause. So first, you gotta bring all this seeking of relief from your suffering to an end. That has to stop. That's what renunciation is. And you now deal with this suffering. You see, put your arm around it and no more running. And you look into your suffering and you look and see its causes. And if you would make such an inspection, and those who have made such an inspection, you will realize what they have realized, that the cause of your suffering is your false identification in that which is not self. That's the cause of your suffering. And seeing that, you cease that identification that is the mechanism of your suffering. Now what I'm telling you is profound, much more profound than even it sounds. And you will not be able to encounter and get in touch with that profundity if you do not consider this thing deeply and seriously. You will not see it. You will make information out of what I'm telling you. And you will not be changed. You see, this identification of self and the not self is the mechanism underlying your suffering. You follow me? Yes. And as long as you remain identified in identifying yourself with that which you are not, then you will continue to suffer. You will go on seeking this and that to relieve the suffering, and eventually, every time you seek this to relieve the suffering, you see, the ability of that thing to relieve your suffering in the future diminishes. And you're just chasing it. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
You're watching TV, but you got to watch more of it, and it has less diminishing effect on your suffering. So now you got to leave the goddamn TV on all night. You know what I mean?
Ain't nothing on TV.
Even if ain't nothing on TV, no, just, you just, you know what I mean? Like you smoking roaches. Down to roaches. Diminishing returns, you see? Diminishing returns. And not only that, you see, all of those things that you're doing in your seeking of relief from your suffering, not only are subject to the law of diminishing return, they also have a counterproductive effect. You see, there are consequences from them. You suffer. You see my point? You suffer. See? see, it deepens the suffering. You see. You go out, take you a drink, get away from your suffering. Eventually the effect of the alcohol wears off. Now you're right back to your original suffering. Plus you got a splitting headache.
Hangover.
Hangover. You see my point? You know, we all know these things, you see. We abuse food and sex and all of these things. You know, you abuse food and it's a diminishing return, and then you done screwed your body up. Now your goddamn toes are finna fall off. You goddamn condition. You follow what I'm saying? Your heartbeat is irregular, shit like that. You see? Consequences. It's like that with everything. You see? So you must stop running from the suffering. See the futility of it all. And now deal with the suffering. And you can't relieve the suffering by reading a book and quoting gurus. That don't do anything. That's just more like TV watching. You see my point? You must inspect the suffering. And I guarantee you, if you inspect this suffering thoroughly, with the motive of understanding your suffering, and so forth and so on, you will see what I'm telling you. That the mechanism underlying the suffering is your identification of self in that which is not self. Along with this identification of self and that which is not self, there is attachment. The moment you identify yourself with that which is not self, instantly you begin to feel you own something. Okay. Comes with the territory. Okay. I am this leads to this is mine. Now, if we hear an explosion out there, we'll all run to the window to see if it's my car. If it ain't my car, I'm in it. If it's my car, I'm in suffering. You see? I equals mine. M-I-N-E. And when you get into the mine, M-I-N-E level of ego, tremendous suffering. My wife, my car, my house, my clothes, my children, my this, my that, all of which is subject to death, loss, destruction. Bound to happen. And when it happens, there will be a scream heard around the world. And you will suffer. Because you think something is yours. Yes, beloved.
So that goes along with what you were saying about we have to give up this concept of who we are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You must change the concept of what you are. Even more than the who part, it's the what part. You must change the concept of what you are. This is fundamental.
Now when that change occurs, that means it's like something can blow up out there, but you're not concerned. Is that's what that
You will
looks
respond
like?
appropriately. You see, you put out fires, whatever, but you understand.
That's
It's like
fine.
on a movie. You see? All kinds of things are happening on the screen. And you can even react to them, but deep down inside, you know, this ain't real. This ain't me. This ain't mine. You see? And then you can enjoy life. But I'm telling you, you are not even going to be able to even enjoy your life. Because you are not enjoying life. What you doing are responding to your pain. That ain't enjoying life. Don't get this thing twisted. You don't know a damn thing about enjoying life. All you know about is finding temporary relief from your suffering. You've never enjoyed your life at all.
It's about letting go then.
Well, you know that. You see my point? It's doing it.
Right.
See, it's not even a lack of information at that level. It's about doing this thing now. What good is knowing all this stuff if you ain't doing none of it? See, you got to do this thing. You see. And you won't do it unless you have some radical understanding, grounded in intelligence. That's what gives you the ability to do it. You understand. And you do it. It's no longer, I should be doing it. If you're still in that state of what you should be doing, and if all you know is what you should be doing, but there's a gap between that and what you're actually doing, you're a fool. Absolute fool. It's just bullshit. Just bullshit. Doesn't count for a goddamn thing. Knowing what you should do and not doing it is meaningless. Do y'all understand what I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
So this is what you really have to go do. This is the spiritual transformation. You see. And it begins at the mental level. Remember, we haven't gotten down to the existential thing here. I'm just saying at the beginning. This is what you must be minimally capable of doing, is changing your concept of yourself. That's the minimum thing that you must be able to do. Willing to do, understanding to do that. See how that is so. And then the process can begin to occur for you. But I tell you, beloveds, truly, that as long as you are trying to operate based on the concept of what you think you are, and yet somehow expect to do this sadhana to become anything like happy or realized, it's the greatest self-deception you can practice on yourself. That's not going to happen. It's not. And if you want to cling to, if you insist on maintaining your egoic condition, then you will go on. And you will spend the rest of your life finding just temporary relief from the agony of that condition. And you will do this, and you will be doing that, and then eventually, all of that will run out, and you'll simply drop dead. And you would have never enjoyed life. Your life was reactionary. So this is a serious conversation we're having here. We're in the cooler house. This is where we come to have serious conversation, because we can't do that publicly, you see, without offending some people. Can hardly do it here without offending. I'm back against the wall. I can't run no further from y'all. So all that we're talking about here today, you must not reduce it and limit it to philosophy and psychology. I mean, you must really go away from here, or stay here for that matter. It's your house, you see. And you must really sit down, and you must make this transition, this transformation. This must simply occur in you. This must occur in you. This sadhana that I have been talking to you about is not even the highest form of sadhana. Simran, bhajan, dhyan, all of the auxiliary practices and so forth. All of that in this collective state is not the great sadhana. You see? All of that is a kind of preparation for the great sadhana, the mahasadhana.
Primary.
The principal sadhana, which is to love.
All right.
You see? That's the principal sadhana. That is the test that every human being must pass before they are admitted into the Dhambar of the divine. Everybody who will seek God realization must be able to pass that test, you see, to see whether you are able to maintain the asana, the disposition of being loved, moment to moment, in every relationship, in every encounter. You see, always required to be loving in all of your relationships, no matter what they're doing on the other side of that relationship. You are simply required to exhibit the ability to maintain the posture of love. Now we'll let Bilal change his tape.
Thank you.
The same discussion I was having to some degree with the mentors and the Unity of Humanity project that is going to be working with some of the at-risk teens, male teens, that is at one of my clients' school, but I was reinforcing in them that they have to understand this here. I don't know how we got on the subject, but we did get on that subject, so yeah, it was there. So this is a reminder again. If you didn't get it then, you get it again. Pay attention. Simran, Bhajan, and Diyan is not the ultimate practice of sadhana. The ultimate practice of sadhana is love. That's the test of human existence. Human existence is a continuous test of whether or not you have the ability to love somebody under all conditions, moment to moment. Now, if you want to talk about something hard, that's hard. Staying awake in your budget, you can't do that. You have no possibility of passing that test. And yet you walk around here talking about you want to become capable of loving everybody. You want to be loving and kind toward all sentient beings. How in the world do you think you're going to do that? You can't do Simran, you can't do Bhajan, you can't get up, you can't be regular, you can't be punctual, you can't stay away. Yet you are so arrogant because of your egoic condition to presume that you're going to be capable of loving everybody. I'm telling you, you ain't even going to be able to love one human being. You will fail this test. And it is the test. Every human being is being tested moment to moment for the demonstration of the capacity to be the agency of love, to be the agency of grace, to be the agency of blessing. That's sadhana. That's sadhana. That's hard. You want to know something hard? That's hard. What you've been called to do, that shit ain't hard. And if you can't do that, then give up all talk about loving somebody. You don't have the ability to love nobody. You have failed the test of human beingness. And in failing that test of being a human being, you will be deprived of the opportunity to be one again. The human body is the human mind. This thing is designed to do the sadhana of love. That's what it's designed to do. And if you fail the test of making right use of the body-mind, then you don't get the body-mind again. It's that simple. And you are constantly being tested, moment to moment. You see, everyone you come across, randomly, everyone you're in relationship with, by virtue of destiny, karma, so forth and so on, everyone and everything that makes up your experience here is a test to see whether you can maintain the disposition of loveliness, kindness, grace, blessing. Everybody is to be blessed. That's sadhana. And you can't do that level of sadhana preoccupied with you being blessed by everybody that you come in contact with you being loved by everybody you come in contact with. You can't function at that level of sadhana out of that egoic condition. Are y'all following my argument? Now, this is the bottom line. You want to be a bhakta? How will you be a bhakta? You can't even stay awake and budget. How will you be a bhakta? You can't keep your attention on the name of God. How would you keep your attention on God itself? So you got to get out of all this fantasy stuff here. Fantasy mysticism. Fantasy spirituality. That's, you got to outgrow all of that. You've been around me long enough to be big enough to let all that go. Don't you think?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And you have seen in your own life firsthand how ill-equipped you are for the practice of the sadhana of love, haven't you?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You see how quickly you withdraw your love and compassion, mercy for a person whenever that person is not acting right on their side of the relationship with you. You withdraw your love, don't you? You withdraw your blessing. In a New York minute, don't you?
Yeah.
And fly into rage and anger and feelings of insult. Is that about right?
Right.
Tells you about how prepared you are for Sodom at that level. You are not prepared for it. Is that about right?
Yeah.
It is. And you know how hard that is, don't you? To stand in the face of mistreatment and still maintain the posture of loving kindness. You know how. That's hard, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Is that a lot harder than Bhajan and Simran? Of course it is. It makes Bhajan and Simran a catwalk. That's hard. You know what I mean?
I want to say, Goose, I am practicing that in the midst of somebody treating me that's low down.
No. That's bullshit. Okay? Just stop this bullshit.
Okay.
Okay? Stop this bullshit. All right? Stop this bullshit. This is bullshit. Okay? You can't practice that and still be an ego. Got it? So don't do that no more to yourself. And I don't mean to embarrass you or anything like
No.
that. It's true for everybody here.
Right.
Because you better than me. How will you do it? You're an ego-bound person. What are you talking about? You want to do it. You actually think you do it. Now that much you say, so continue.
Right. But I don't think I'm
There
doing
you
it.
go.
Right,
Now.
but I don't think I'm doing it.
There you go.
In the midst of that, like on the job and in the house, they still be more hostile. It make them more hostile. And then I watch it die down. I watch it kind of down. So I just want to change up. I try. I think I'm doing it. But they become more angrier. Like in the midst of that, you're trying to be that love element. And then, later on, they come back around and then, really appreciate that some people have.
Well, it doesn't
like,
make
I was
any
an asshole.
doesn't make any kind of difference how people react. Does it? You are simply always required to maintain that posture and disposition. Period.
It's difficult, man.
Right. I'm telling you.
Really, really difficult.
Very difficult. Much harder than.
Yeah, way harder than the practice, man.
And the practice is what prepares you for that. Ultimately, you see. But it all starts, Sakyani-ji, with exactly what I have told you. You must change. You really must change. You must change this concept of self that you are operating from. You must cultivate what in the tradition has been referred to as Suddha Vikalpa, the right view of self. In Buddhism, The Eightfold Path starts with right view. You can't make one other step on the path that Buddha outlined unless you have made the first step, which is right view. Right view leads to right understanding, right action, and so forth and so on. Right view does not come at the end of the process. Right view must be there in the very beginning. And on all spiritual paths, it is so. Right view must be there right from the very beginning. It is not something that will emerge down the road after you become a vegetarian and stop drugging and drinking. No. It must be there right from the start. And this right view begins with the right view about yourself. See, having the right view about the world and others comes later. If there's not the right view about yourself, how will you have the right view about others in the world? You will not. So this Sudagrikapa, this right mental view and concept of yourself is required. That's required intelligence. That's required understanding. And so this achuda, this wrong view of yourself, this wrong mental concept of yourself that you are presently operating from must be changed from ashuddha to shuddha, from wrong view to right view. And what that will require of each of you on an individual basis will be what the path takes of you. If you become so attached to this wrong view of yourself that you cannot let it go for the sake of it being replaced by a right view, then okay, you're too attached. And nothing can happen. Now, at least one or two of you got to be feeling me today. Don't, you know what I mean? Because I'm trying very hard here
I hear you.
to communicate to you something that is essential if you will not simply spend the rest of your life deluding yourself about all things pertaining to spiritual development. And this transformation of the concept of self will be painful. That too will hurt. There's a tapasya that is associated with that. We have a few more minutes, so anything else to say about it, beloveds? You're going to have to add moments of contemplation to your repertoire. You're going to have to sit down and have moments of contemplation. You got to contemplate. You know, most people don't have a contemplative practice. You know, just sitting quietly. You know, sit out on the veranda, sit under a tree, and contemplate. Not contemplate some mute metaphysical stuff. You know, contemplate what you are. You can add it to your spirit in the dark practice even. Sitting there in the darkness, comfortable, quietly, feel. Beyond the limitation of your thoughts and thinking. Feel your I-ness, just that I-ness. Just try to feel it. the darkness, the silence of wherever you're sitting aids you. Hmm? But you must drop this false sense of self. So if you have nothing to say, then let's just sit silently until a question arises. And just feel. And their body, mind, and emotion too, and feel the same truth that you feel it about yourself is also true them. Isn't it? You too are awareness, aren't you? Everyone and everything is just this awareness, isn't it? If you can feel down to the depths of your being and into that pure awareness that you are, there's no fear of death for you. But then at the same time, you're not fearful of the death of others either, because you know too that Daniel Saab does not die. And there's no fear when his body falls away. No sadness, is it? Feel and see if you can feel the possibility of being something greater than and more wonderful than just being a body, mind, and a cluster of feelings and memories. This is the principle of anatta that the Buddha talked about, not self. The ego self is no self at all. It's just a concept. It doesn't exist. It is not substantial. It has no extension in time and space. It's just a concept. So replace that concept with this other concept. Both concepts, and you are capable of concepts. Even now, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
So just replace one concept with the other concept. The difference is that the right concept will now take you all the way down that path that Buddha outlined. You see, the right concept will breed right understanding, right action. You see, right speech, right all the way down. Just imagine you were sitting here in your quiet place in the darkness. Can't you bring up in your awareness the feeling that you were feeling sitting there in the darkness? Can't you just click onto that and pull that file up? And you just can feel this. Eyes open, but not really looking at anything or anyone in particular, or even at all. Looking past it all. Not distracted. entering into this silence like you entered into the darkness. Silence will produce the same effect that darkness does. Just enter into it. This is Zazen, entering into the silence. So with that said, we can begin to wrap up for the day. So you have an additional practice that you can add while entering into the darkness. Okay, good. Then find another moment in the day to just enter into silence. Just sit down and be quiet. Yes, brother.
And that's without the seminar and yoga practice?
You can always do similar, but what I'm careful about in these kind of practices is to make sure that you don't get these confused. You know what I mean? Infused. If you can do Simran, then these practices are really not required. So you have a choice. You can do these things or perfect your Simran. Same outcome. You know? Same outcome. They're like auxiliary things, like your diet, you know, so forth and so on. But Simran is the kind of practice that you do. When you're doing Simran, then you should just be doing Simran and not, you know, you don't want to mix practices, you see. But Simran is fine. Sit quietly, do Simran, fine. Or just sit quietly, doesn't matter. These are good. But I remind you again, they're not equal to changing your concept of self. You see my point? None of this is of any value and any use if you're still operating out of the same concept you have of yourself that you've been operating out of. None of what I'm telling you and none of these things you're doing will ultimately have any long-lasting value. They will simply become stuff you do to give yourself a little relief from the agony of your egoic condition. And the returns of relief will be diminishing over time. And a time will come, in 6 months, y'all won't be doing any of this shit. Because it will have lost the ability to give you that hit. And then you'll be looking for something else to do. That's how it is. If, however, you are able to make that change in your very concept of yourself, then these practices become nurturing. It grows it, it deepens it. You follow me? Strengthens it, gives you the ability to abide in that transformed state of mental concept of yourself. You're able to hold it. It gets anchored. You follow me? But it must be in place. Otherwise, saints who read the Guru Granth Sahib, Nanak Sahib, and all of the Sikh Gurus say very clearly, japa for 1,000 years is meaningless if it's been done outside the context. So you can do all the japa you want. You can repeat Om or any mantra you want at any time. Outside of context, nothing. It's all about context. You see. Because otherwise, what are you practicing for? I mean, really, what are you practicing for? Are you practicing to become a lover, or are you practicing to make yourself feel better? I mean, what are you practicing for? You practicing to create status in other people's eyes, or you practicing to, as a part of your self-delusion project? What? Why are you practicing?
Self-realization, I hope.
Well, it's a question you must put to yourself.
Right.
You know, I know why you should be practicing, but the reality is asking yourself, why are you really practicing? Are you practicing to become capable of the great sadhana of love? And if so, how that's going for you? Have your practice been able to bear fruit? Are you becoming more capable of maintaining that disposition and posture that is always already loving prior to others' reaction and response to you? Little by little don't count. Either you are or you're not. Yes, but
That means that I have to become aware of the false identity that I've created about myself.
yeah, I guess you can say that to some extent. You got to see yourself, observe that self, understanding that that's the false self. But in some sense, you see, you are living it moment to moment. You know what I mean? It's something that is self-evident. You know, whatever you are is the false self. You see. And what you definitely want to observe, see what's all that about. You see what you're up to. Now, there's been many considerations offered you all in the past, structure to help you profile your concept of self. Is that about right? If that was engaged in, then you begin to have a pretty clear concept of your self-concept. I've asked you about what do you believe about yourself is the case, and so forth and so on. But at its core, there is the belief you are this body. You see, now you may believe that the body is pretty, the body is ugly, but the fundamental belief is what? I'm the body. And you may have some beliefs about your emotions. I'm calm, cool, collected, or I'm angry and fiery, but the fundamental belief is that you are your emotions. That's the fundamental thing. And you have even beliefs about the nature of your mind. Well, my mind is this. I'm a curious person. I'm a deep thinker. I can't think deep. You know, I get easily. I mean, you got so many different beliefs about it. But the core belief is that you are the mind. You follow what I'm saying? So how much you want to elaborate on those core beliefs is up to you. But there is the case.
So, good, so what you're telling us is that what we actually believe, or what we see ourselves as, body, mind, emotions and all that, is the ego. And as long as we see ourselves as that, that remains ego. It is only when we disassociate or detach from seeing ourselves as that we begin to have a possibility of seeing ourselves as something else.
Yeah, and even technically speaking, even the replacement of the wrong view of self is also ego. Ego is just a sense of self. So, in Sanskrit, the Sanskrit term is homin. Homin is the fundamental sense of I-ness, the feeling of I-amness. That feeling of I-amness is true. That is the pure aham. You see, pure ego versus contaminated ego, if you will. See, there's a contamination of ego that is referred to as the problematic ego, the empirical ego, you see. But then there is that real I amness, right? That too can be called a ego, just like there can be a false self and a true self, you know? The word self is there in both cases, isn't it? So language makes it a little bit more confusing to talk about it. But essentially, what the goal is to recover the experience of your pure I amness and not this false experience of I am this or I am that. That's a contaminated experience of your I amness, you see. There is a I amness that is prior to the body, durates while you have a body, and persists even when the body drops, you see. And it is identification with that eternal I amness that liberates you from the fears of your identification with these transient objects that we become identified with, you see. That is what you are to go consider. You see. And it may be more than you can deal with. It may be more than you can comprehend. You may not be able to just, you know. But I'm simply reiterating and repeating what has been stated from time immemorial. You must simply become capable of that. You must have right view. You must be able to make that kind of transformation. You see, Jesus comes and tells you you are spirit. I mean, you must be able to conceive of yourself as spirit and not merely body mind. Otherwise, what can Jesus do? You see, a Buddha come and give you the revelation of anatta. You're not that thing that you think you are. That's an illusion. But if you can't grasp it, then what to do? You see, if it remains unbelievable to you, inconceivable to you, then what can be done? You see, but it is the same message. Yes, beloved.
Well, Master, when you was talking about going into silence, is there a difference between having a strong, intense way of going into silence versus you just letting it come naturally? Excuse me, when you go into it, should you really have this concentrated, intense way of going into it, or should you just relax and just let it be?
But you have to be relaxed, yeah, and fall into it. It's not so much a doing, in as much as it is a non-doing. Just like when you try to fall asleep, it usually fails. Because it's not a trying type of thing. It is a kind of letting go type of thing. You just relax. Meditation is like that. You know, meditation is, you know, not concentration. Concentration is a preparation to get into the state that is meditation, but meditation is not concentrating, you see. It is a kind of being, it's just being. It's a kind of effortless thing. Nothing is being done. It's a non-action. That is a reach through great action. So consider what, why, how, when, where of meditation. So that we don't waste our lives. You know what I mean? You don't want to waste your lifetime. You see, just with blind belief in this and blind belief in that, you know, that could be the greatest tragedy for all of us, wouldn't it? You don't want to waste your life like that. So,
Smoke a lot.
smoke is, there's new wood there? Or shake them. Y'all going to hell.
Might be today.